Imagine you're at a buffet, but it's like a social media buffet. You just keep piling your plate high with likes and shares and, all that. It's all a feast for the ego, but like that second helping of dessert, it leaves you feeling kind of empty. Welcome to Quantum Soul, everyone. Today we're diving deep into narcissism, particularly in this digital age we're living in.
It's definitely a timely topic, right? I mean, think about it. We're surrounded by these perfectly curated online personas, this whole culture that seems to just celebrate self-promotion. It really makes you wonder, are we all becoming a little more narcissistic?
Yeah, that's the big question. We've got a lot of fascinating sources that we're going to be unpacking today. We've got articles that explore the psychology behind narcissism, its relationship with social media. We even have some stuff on the myth of Narcissus. So it's kind of like we're going on a treasure hunt through history and psychology to not only understand what narcissism is, but how it impacts, the connections that we form and what we can do about it.
Yeah, I think what's really interesting is how this age-old concept of narcissism is being reshaped by this digital landscape we live in. If you think about the myth of Narcissus, he was captivated by his own reflection. And today it's like our reflections are just multiplied across these screens, always seeking validation through likes and shares.
It's like social media is holding up a digital mirror, right? Amplifying narcissistic tendencies. One of the articles called it a validation trap, where we're chasing those dopamine hits, from the likes and the comments. But we never really feel satisfied.
Yeah, it's like the nature of addiction in a way. Our brains are wired to seek those rewards. Social media gives this constant stream of pleasure. But the problem is it's often a very superficial reward. It can lead to this cycle of needing more and more validation without ever addressing the underlying need for connection.
It's like trading real relationships for a fleeting sense of online popularity. And speaking of real relationships, the myth of Narcissus is a pretty powerful reminder of the dangers of self-obsession. I mean, here's a guy who literally wasted away.
Yeah.
Because he couldn't see beyond his own reflection.
Yeah, it's definitely a cautionary tale. It highlights the consequences of prioritizing self-image over genuine connection. Narcissus was surrounded by people who admired him, but he just wasn't capable of forming any meaningful bonds because his focus was solely inward.
It makes you think, are we all in danger of becoming a little bit like Narcissus, right? Lost in our own digital reflections, missing out on the beauty around us. But here's an interesting twist. One of the articles suggested that just spending 30 minutes less on social media each day can increase happiness as much as winning a small lottery.
That's pretty wild. It sounds counterintuitive, but the science behind it makes sense. When we reduce our screen time, we're actually freeing up mental space for deeper engagement with the world around us. It lets us be more present in our interactions and really cultivate those face-to-face connections that are so important to our well-being.
It's like we're swapping empty digital calories for a nourishing meal of human interaction. Before we go any further, I want to take a moment to thank our viewers for joining us. If you're finding this deep dive into narcissism insightful, don't forget to hit that subscribe button, give us a thumbs up, and share this video with your friends. Help us spread the word about the importance of authentic connection in a world that often feels increasingly self-centered.
Now let's dive into the cost of those superficial connections that often dominate the online world. What happens when we prioritize fleeting interactions over real, genuine intimacy?
Yeah, that's where the real danger lies, right? It's like building a house on a foundation of sand. It might look good on the outside, but ultimately it's not stable. One of the articles even talks about the listening deficit that often comes along with these narcissistic tendencies.
That's a really good point. If we're always focused on ourselves, how can we truly listen to and empathize with other people? Narcissism creates this barrier to understanding because it's all about self-preservation and self-promotion, and it leaves very little room for genuine curiosity about the experiences of others.
It's like we're talking at each other rather than with each other. But here's something I found fascinating. Did you know that active listening makes you 5 times more likely to form a lasting connection than talking about yourself?
Wow, that's really interesting. It really flips the script on how we approach relationships. When we shift our focus from trying to promote ourselves to just being genuinely curious about another person, we create space for trust and intimacy to grow.
Yeah, it's like active listening is the secret sauce to building those deeper, more meaningful connections that we all want. It allows us to step outside of our own little narratives and really see the world through another person's eyes.
It's a really powerful practice and one that can transform our relationships in such profound ways. Think about it when someone really listens to you. Doesn't it make you feel seen, heard, and understood? That's the power of active listening. It's about making the other person feel valued and respected. And those are really the cornerstones of any healthy relationship.
It's like we're saying you matter, your experiences matter, and I'm here to listen. But how do we cultivate this powerful skill of active listening, especially in a world that feels so noisy and distracting?
Well, that's where the real work comes in. It's about being intentional, present, and fully engaged in the conversation, putting down our phones, making eye contact, resisting the urge to just interject with our own stories, and asking clarifying questions, really demonstrating that we're absorbing what the other person is saying.
So it takes effort. It's almost like we have to retrain our brains to listen differently. But I can already see how rewarding it would be to create those deeper, more authentic connections through the simple act of listening.
It is a practice, a skill we can hone over time. And the more we practice, the more natural it becomes. But the benefits are truly immeasurable. Active listening is not just about building stronger relationships. It's about cultivating empathy, understanding, and compassion, which are qualities that are essential for navigating our increasingly complex world. It's really amazing how such a simple act, like listening, can be so powerful. But we live in a world where it seems like everyone's just clamoring to be heard. It makes you wonder, is it even possible to have like real, genuine connection in an environment that's so self-focused?
I know it's a real challenge. I mean, we're constantly being bombarded with messages telling us to promote ourselves, to build our brand, stand out from the crowd. It's almost like we're being trained to prioritize self-promotion over genuine connection.
Yeah, it's a huge cultural shift, and it has big implications for how we relate to each other. But the good news is, we're not powerless in the face of these trends. We can make choices about how we engage with the world, both online and offline. One of the articles talked about some practical strategies for building authentic connections. Even amidst all the noise and distractions of modern life, it all starts with self-awareness.
Self-awareness, yeah. I mean, if we're not even aware of our own tendencies, how can we even begin to connect authentically with others?
That's exactly right. It's all about taking a step back. And honestly, looking at our own behaviors, our motivations, our patterns. Are we actually interested in connecting with other people? Or are we just using interactions to validate ourselves? Are we really listening? Or are we just waiting for our turn to speak? These are the questions we need to be asking ourselves if we want to move past those surface level interactions.
It's like holding up a mirror to our own soul.
Yeah.
It can be uncomfortable, but it's also freeing. Once we see ourselves clearly, we can start making choices about how we want to show up.
Exactly. And that's where the real work begins. The article highlighted cultivating empathy as a key strategy. It's about going beyond our own self-centered perspective and making an effort to truly understand what other people are going through.
Easier said than done, right? It's not like empathy is a switch you can just turn on and off.
Right. It takes a willingness to step outside of our comfort zones, challenge our assumptions, and open ourselves up to different ways of seeing the world.
Okay, so how do we do that?
Well, it's a muscle that we need to exercise regularly, and one of the best ways to do that is through active listening, like we were discussing before. It's not just about hearing words, it's about paying attention to the nuances of communication, both verbal and nonverbal. It's about reading between the lines, sensing the emotions behind the words, and responding with genuine curiosity and compassion.
So we're like emotional detectives.
Yeah.
Searching for clues to unlock the deeper meaning behind someone's words and actions.
Exactly. And the more we practice that, the better we get at reading those emotional cues, and the more attuned we become to the needs of other people. It's a subtle shift, but it can have a profound impact on how we relate to one another.
The article also talks about the importance of embracing vulnerability. That's an interesting concept, almost counterintuitive in a world that tells us to project an image of strength and perfection.
It's a paradox for sure. We're told to be confident, self-assured, and control. But real connection requires us to let our guard down, to show our imperfections, allow ourselves to be seen for who we really are.
So it's like this tightrope walk between authenticity and self-protection.
Yeah.
How do we know when to reveal those vulnerabilities and when to hold back?
It's definitely a delicate dance. There's no easy answer. But one key thing the article brought up was vulnerability is most powerful when it's reciprocated. It's about creating an environment where both people feel safe to share their authentic selves without fear of being judged or rejected.
So it's about building trust, brick by brick. You reveal a little, I reveal a little. And over time, that shared vulnerability becomes the foundation for a deep and meaningful connection.
It's like building a bridge of understanding, one vulnerable share at a time. And as that bridge gets stronger, we're able to cross over into a deeper level of intimacy and action.
That's a great analogy. The article also emphasizes the importance of shared experiences.
Yeah.
It's not just about talking, it's about doing things together, creating memories,
Wow.
building a shared history.
Think about it. Some of the strongest bonds that we form in life come from those shared experiences, whether it's going through a tough time together, celebrating a milestone, or just enjoying a hobby or activity together.
Yeah, those shared moments create a shorthand, a language that only the people who are there can really understand.
Exactly. And those shared memories become threads that weave together the tapestry of our relationships. They give us something to laugh about, reminisce about, bond over long after the experience is over.
Yeah, it makes you realize that connection isn't just about words, it's about creating a shared narrative, a story that we write together.
Exactly. And that is such a powerful antidote to the isolation and loneliness that can come with narcissism. When we focus on creating shared experiences, we're shifting our attention outward towards something bigger than ourselves. We're building connections that are grounded in something real, something tangible, something that transcends those fleeting online interactions.
It's like reminding ourselves that we're part of something bigger.
Exactly. And that sense of belonging, that feeling of being part of a tribe, it's essential to our well-being. It gives us a sense of purpose, meaning connection, in a world that can often feel chaotic and overwhelming.
It's like finding our place in the grand scheme of things,
Yeah.
one shared experience at a time. Okay, so let's bring it back to the digital landscape. We've talked about the challenges of social media, but is there a way to use these platforms to actually enhance our connections?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? Can we reclaim these platforms as tools for connection instead of just self-promotion? Well, the article offered some pretty hopeful insights. It suggests that we can use social media more intentionally, focusing on building relationships instead of just chasing likes and followers.
So it's not about abandoning social media completely. It's about being more mindful of how we use it.
Exactly. It's about setting boundaries, being selective about who we connect with, using these platforms to share meaningful content. That fosters genuine interaction.
So it's all about intention.
Right. Social media is a tool, and like any tool, it can be used for good or bad. It depends on the intention behind it.
Makes sense.
One practical suggestion was to use social media to connect with people who share our interests, values, and passions. Instead of just mindlessly scrolling, we can actively seek out communities and individuals who inspire us, challenge us, make us feel connected to something bigger than ourselves.
So we're curating our own little digital ecosystem, surrounding ourselves with people who lift us up.
Exactly. And as we engage with those communities in a more intentional way, we're creating opportunities for genuine connection. We can share our thoughts, our experiences, our struggles, our triumphs, knowing that we're surrounded by people who understand us.
I like building a virtual campfire.
Exactly. And those virtual campfires can often spark real-life connections. You might meet up with someone from your online community for coffee, attend an event together, or even collaborate on a project.
It's amazing how technology can be both a barrier and a bridge
Yeah,
to connection.
absolutely. It really comes down to how we choose to use it.
Right.
The article also makes a really important point about remembering the difference between online personas and real-life identities. It's so easy to get caught up in the curated perfection of social media, comparing ourselves to those highlight reels and feeling like we don't measure up.
Yeah, it's like this constant barrage of airbrushed lives, flawless bodies, perfect vacations. It's no wonder so many of us feel insecure and inadequate.
Right. The key is to remember that social media is just a snapshot, a carefully constructed glimpse into someone's life. It rarely captures the full picture, the messiness, the vulnerabilities that make us human.
It's like comparing our behind the scenes to someone else's highlight reel.
Exactly. So the next time you're scrolling through your feed and you're starting to feel envious or inadequate, remind yourself that you're only seeing a tiny piece of the story.
Yeah, we need to focus on our own journeys. Celebrate our unique gifts and talents. Appreciate the beauty in our imperfections.
Exactly. And remember that true connection comes from authenticity,
Right.
from sharing our real selves with others, flaws and all.
Embracing the messiness of being human.
Beautifully said. And I think that leads us perfectly into our next segment, where we'll explore some practical strategies for cultivating authenticity in a world that seems so obsessed with image and perfection.
But before we do that, I want to take a moment to thank our viewers for being here. If you're enjoying this deep dive, don't forget to hit that subscribe button, give us a thumbs up, and share this video with your friends. We believe that the world needs more authentic connection, and we're so grateful to have you as part of our community.
Now let's talk about how we can move beyond the superficial and cultivate those deeper, more meaningful connections in our everyday lives. And it all starts with cultivating authenticity. So how do we move past these online personas and start building real, authentic connections in our lives?
It's tough, right? I mean, in a world where we're often more connected to our devices than we are to each other.
It is a challenge, but it's not impossible. One of the articles had this interesting idea. It said the key is shifting our focus from trying to promote ourselves to just being genuinely curious about other people.
So instead of selfie sticks, we need listening ears.
Yeah.
That's a pretty radical idea, especially in a culture that's all about, putting yourself out there.
It is a different way of thinking, but it can really change our relationships. Think about it. When was the last time someone really listened to you? Like without interrupting, without giving advice, without trying to bring the conversation back to themselves?
Yeah. It's been a while. It's so easy to get caught up in our own heads that we forget to really listen to what other people have to say.
And that's where the magic happens. When we truly listen, we create space for connection, understanding, empathy. It's like saying, I see you, I hear you. What you have to say matters to me.
That's powerful. It's like validating another person's experience, acknowledging their humanity, making them feel seen.
Exactly. That's what real connection is all about. It's about moving past the surface and creating a space for intimacy. The article suggested asking open-ended questions. Questions that invite the other person to share more.
So instead of those yes or no questions, that could shut down a conversation. We encourage them to go deeper.
Right. It's about showing that you're truly interested and curious, that you want to understand their point of view.
It's like turning the spotlight away from our own egos and shining it on someone else.
Exactly. And when we do that, something amazing happens. We start to see the world through their eyes. We feel their joys and sorrows. We connect with them on a much deeper level. The article also talked about nonverbal communication. Things like eye contact, body language, tone of voice. These things can say a lot about how engaged we are.
It's like speaking a language without words.
Exactly. And when those nonverbal cues match up with what we're saying, it creates this sense of trust and connection.
Like a symphony of communication.
I like that. The article also mentioned the importance of being present. In a world full of distractions, it can be hard to really focus on the person in front of us.
Oh, I know. It's like our minds are going a mile a minute.
And that can be a big obstacle to connection when we're not fully present. We miss those little moments, those moments of laughter or vulnerability that really build intimacy.
It's like trying to watch a movie with one eye on the screen and the other on your phone.
Exactly. We need to cultivate mindfulness. To train our minds to stay in the moment, to appreciate the richness of human interaction.
It takes work.
Yeah.
But I can see how rewarding it would be.
The rewards are definitely there. As we become more present, we become more attuned to the beauty of connection. We notice the little things, the twinkle in someone's eye, the warmth of their smile.
We start to see the world with appreciation instead of judgment.
Exactly, and that can be so transformative. It lets us connect on a much deeper level. The article also brought up shared experiences as powerful ways to build connection.
Makes sense. Think about all the bonds we've formed through traveling, learning new things, even just sharing a meal.
Those shared moments create memories that last a lifetime. They give us things to talk about, laugh about, reminisce about.
It's like building a shared history.
Exactly, and those experiences become touchstones, reminding us of the bonds we have. The article encourages us to be intentional about this, to plan a trip with friends, join a book club, volunteer.
It's about getting out of our comfort zones, creating opportunities for connection to happen.
And when we do that, we're not just enriching our own lives, we're contributing to a more connected and compassionate world.
It's nice to think that our efforts to connect can have a ripple effect.
We are all interconnected, our lives are woven together, and even small acts of kindness and connection can make a difference.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into narcissism and authentic connection, what's the main takeaway?
I think the main takeaway is that connection is a choice. We can choose to focus on ourselves, or we can choose to be curious about others. We can choose to get lost in distractions, or we can choose to be present. We can choose to build walls, or we can choose to build bridges.
And those choices shape not just our own lives, but the world around us.
Well said. If you enjoyed this deep dive, don't forget to subscribe to our channel, like this video, and share it. Let's spread the message of connection.
And be sure to check out the 2 videos on your screen. Click on one to continue your journey with us here on Quantum Soul. We'll see you there.